ahead and get started. This is Deborah Jennings, and I am the director here at the Center for Parent Information and Resources, also known as the CPIR, which is the home for the ParentCenterHub.org, as well as our e-newsletter, The Buzz from the Hub. And you'll hear a little bit more about how we're looking at these two dissemination vehicles later on in our discussion. I do want to just let you know Miriam Alizo is joining us, and she's going to give you a little bit of information about webinar etiquette. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but it never is too often, I think, sometimes.
Hi. Yes, welcome to the webinar. Welcome to the webinar, and just some reminders. We will not be muted today on the phone line, so please be mindful of background noise on your end. We can hear everything. Feel free to use the chat box for your questions or comments. And you can also use the raise your hand feature that is on the little icon on the top left. And we will have a couple of areas in the webinar where you have the chance to provide some feedback. So be ready to interact with us shortly.
Thank you, Miriam. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. We're going to start out this gathering with a poll. So we have a question. We're wondering what role you play in your parent center. And so if we could take about 40 or 50 seconds for folks to just click on your role, because we just wanted to have an idea of who was going to be participating in the conversation today. So we have about 11 people who have indicated their role. And Indira, let's just go ahead and close the poll. So it looks like the majority of our participants are directors, either project directors or PPI, CPRC directors or executive directors. And about half of that number are actually program staff. And so this is a really good combination of folks. We didn't know if people were going to have their tech staff or administrative staff to join the call, but I think one of the things that we are going to want to talk and emphasize most is how as we're thinking about technology, it is the programs, it is the organization that drives the technology and not the technology that drives the organization. So we have the right people in the conversation at the right time. And dear, were we going to do the next poll right now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, they both went away.
Somebody must have hit it. Okay.
So we'll, maybe I'll do there we are, okay. So the next question is, how would you assess your tech skills? Do you feel like you're a tech professional, or are you a sort of a tech nerd who just is always looking for new ways to use technology, even though that's not the main focus for your role or your position? Do you feel like you're tech savvy and that you use technology on a pretty regular basis and you're comfortable? Or do you just use it because you have to, that you do use it and you're comfortable with it? Or would you say that you're really tech averse, which is you avoid using technology as much as possible? And then there's an other, and I'd be interested to know what the other might be. So we have 11 responses. And I think we can go ahead and close the poll, Indira. So what we have is that many of the folks in the conversation consider themselves to be tech savvy. 9 out of the 12 respondents consider themselves to be tech savvy. And that is also a good combination of people to be on the call with us today, because so much of what we're going to talk about also is about what are the things that are working and what things we want to share across the network. There are a couple of us who are tech nerds, and I finally outed myself as a tech nerd just probably over the summer when I realized how much time I could just sort of end up down the rabbit hole when it came to exploring new kinds of technology and, trying to figure out how it works, how to use it. And so I tend to be sort of a tech nerd in that way, and I saw somebody else join me in that group. And then there was one other, and I don't know if the person who indicated themselves as being other might want to just sort of give us an idea of what an other in this area might be that we didn't really cover in our poll. But you don't have to. So okay, so the next slide, which Indira, for some reason, is not happening. Is there something going on my end or yours? Oh, okay.
No, I'm gonna show the next slide here.
You got an other.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Who's the other? I was an other. Not savvy, but proficient. Yes, because it's what I use, and proficient in what I use. Thanks, Debbie, for sharing that with us, because there are probably a lot of folks on the line and also in our Parent Center network who would see themselves as being not totally savvy, but feeling pretty competent and proficient in the tools that we use. So today's is really a conversation. We want to have a conversation with you about the kinds of technology that you're using, the things that are working really well for you, and also about the ways that the CPIR can organize, share, generate, facilitate the sharing of resources across the network that are going to be useful, relevant, and impactful for us as parent centers. So we're going to just take a few minutes just to talk a little bit about what the technology priority looks like for parent centers, and particularly for the CPIR, and then also about our CPIR approaches to the development of products and resources. And then we'll talk a little bit about how we'd like to invite you to join and to participate in our product development activities, particularly around this topical area. So in terms of the priorities, many of you may have been maybe familiar with the priorities that OSEP has promulgated in terms of the work of the CPIR and the parent centers. And one of those priorities well, actually, two of the priorities are around the use of technology. First of all, the use of technology in providing services for and with families and youth, families of children with disabilities and youth with disabilities. And the second is around how to use technology in our sort of day-to-day nonprofit management. And I think we want to remind you that in the CPIR, at the Center for Parent Information and Resources, our goal and our roles are really focused around what is called universal technical assistance. And universal technical assistance is where we are providing access to information and resources in a way where you as parent centers, our users, are able to access that information and to use that information or use that resource with little or no individual assistance, little or no individual interaction. Our primary ways of doing that are, as many of you know, through the repository of resources at parentcenterhub.org, and also through the buzz from the hub, and through our social media posts through Twitter as well as Facebook. That we're here to let you know that there are resources, that you can find those resources through searching our website. You can call us or email us requesting a particular resource. But again, our charge from OSEP is that that resource would be one where it would not require a lot of individual assistance. For the more targeted or intensive assistance around this topic or any other topic, that's where you would go to your regional parent technical assistance centers. So we know that that's our focus. So we want to let you know that we are really game for this. This is an interesting. I want to share with you that this is a really interesting topic for us to really take a hold of, because there is, we first started out thinking, use of technology, it's one of our priorities. Let's do a webinar on use of technology. And we said, well, how will we organize that? What could we include in that? And we have all of these enormous topics that are related to the use of technology in service provision, and all these, and another long list of topics of what is related to nonprofit management. And it's not as if we can say, well, only some of these topics are important for parent centers, but not these topics are important for parent centers. You know as well as I do that the expectations for us as organizations, as parent centers, are not even limited to just these areas. And so it really was sort of like, okay, well, where do you start? Where do you begin? And my response to the team was, we have to really start with parent centers as as our primary users, as our audience, as our, for lack of a better word, customers, so that we could get feedback from you on what your needs are, what's working, what's not working, and where are the gaps. So in addition to all of those topics, we also realized that within each of those topics, throughout all these kinds of resources and networks and applications and software and hardware and notebooks and iPads and so forth, that there are all kinds of ways, there are all kinds of vehicles that are considered to be technology that address any and or really just about all of that list of enormous topics. And so we have this array of options. We have these lists of our priorities and our services, And we really are hoping that what we can start to do is to really think about how do we get this, these sort of bushels of challenges or bushels of activities or bushels of opportunities and have them organized in ways that, particularly those of us who are like me or who are, sort of linear and sort of strategically oriented can really have things organized in a way that is going to be useful, accomplishable, and is not going to add to the jumble of things that we are always having to deal with as parent centers. And so it's, really about sort of putting together those puzzles to make sure that what we're offering through the CPIR really is suitable in terms of addressing your needs, addressing the kinds of systems that we have to have, but also that it is responsive to the strengths and assets that we have within and throughout parent centers across the network. Because we know that there are huge strengths in this area in terms of our parent center network. It's interesting because right before this webinar, I had an opportunity to meet with some folks from our State Department for Children and Families, and around an initiative that's going on where they're really trying to organize all the different systems that serve children into much easier processes in terms of how people can get into the system and get what they need in terms of through information referral and communication and so forth. And so we've been working with them for a few months now, and there's one, our sort of project officer sends out at least 2 or 3 emails a day. And I said to her, actually to the person who we were meeting with, who unfortunately was her boss, so I might be in trouble. But I mentioned, I said, there's a lot of tools out there that you can use for the kind of collaboration that you're looking for to make sure that everybody has the information that they need when they need it and where they need it without having to get 10 emails a week that then they have to figure out where am I going to put them and why am I going to, how am I going to find it when I need it. I said to her, I just set up a smart mailbox for our project officer. And everything that she sends me just goes right in there, and then I can go hunt through it. But there's got to be a better way. I said, there's so many collaboration tools. And, I'm the little parent center with peanuts, and they're the huge, government agency with millions. But, I can share with them some information about technology that they just haven't had, they have no clue about. And I know that many of us out there in parent center world have experiences with so many tools that we found useful and that we would love to share with our partners and with our colleagues because it really helps for all of us to be able to have better operations and systems and services and programs. So we always want to remember, though, that when we talk about technology, we have a tendency to sort of get into conversations about what I like to call gadgets and gizmos aplenty. And if any of you know me, I do have a daughter named Ariel. But, we talk about, the thing. We talk about the what, in terms of what that technology is. What is that app? But we always want to remember it. I think this is like a great, slide to sort of print out and just post someplace, that when we're talking about technology, it's not about the what. It's really about, who's going to do it, who has to do it, who's going to get it done, why is this really important, and how is this really going to help us to do things, to do those really important things that we have to do as parent centers. How many of you have actually gone through a process where you've done technology planning? and or an even more sort of robust process is how you're embedding technology planning into your strategic planning, that those processes that we go through in terms of where do we see our organization and what do we have to do to get there? How are we embedding technology into that planning and being really intentional about it? It's also important in terms of, as this article states, becoming tech-savvy, a tech-savvy nonprofit culture. It's also so important to make sure that staff are getting the kind of training that they need. And there are so many resources in terms of technology that helps to train individuals about technology, and that it's so important for us to make sure that our staff are getting there, accessing them, and that we know ways that we can help them to be proficient in terms of they're being able to use the technology the way that it's important for them to use it. I know this is probably one of the most fun times of year for us as Parent Centers, because we're getting ready to jump into our reporting around the Parent Center data collection. And we'll get a lot more information about that on our call next week on the 17th. But if staff aren't trained in how to put the information into the most excellent, fabulous, overly priced system that we get, it won't help us when it's time to do the report. We might still end up having to go back and, count the sheets and tick it off in little bundles of 5 if we don't have our staff ready to be able to do that. And then part of that piece, in terms of having staff ready, is it's about how are we including our staff as well as other stakeholders who are going to be impacted in making decisions about the kinds of technology that we're going to use. If we include people in making decisions, and this is probably a mantra that as Parent Centers we don't even, we sort of live this, of the importance of including people in the decisions, that and how much that helps for us to be able to implement new ideas and to get things done. And then the last point here is to don't be afraid to play. And I think one of the things that we unfortunately don't have enough time to do is we don't have enough play time. But there's a lot of new kinds of technology out there. Like I was just looking at survey technology, and I think a lot of us are familiar with SurveyMonkey, Question Pro, and then I saw this thing called Line Survey, and I don't know if anybody has tried that yet, but it was really interesting and entertaining, and I started playing with it when I was probably supposed to be doing something else. But it's important to sort of, be out there and to see, to have chances to play and to, stop into the local store that sells technology, and I don't even know what those are anymore because I think a lot of us buy things online. But to stop in places and, try things out, like in an Apple store or Sony store or, I don't know if Microsoft has stores, but, to really stop and play and check things out and see what's new and to talk to young people about what they're playing with, and because they just play with things naturally. So I just wanted you to sort of keep these kinds of things in mind, particularly as we're having this conversation. So, so this is the process that we would like to use as we move forward in getting the kinds of resources out there and available to you around this particular topic. So we have 2 questions that we'd like to hear from you on, and we have a nice-sized group, so it shouldn't be difficult for everyone to have opportunities to share their input. As we're looking at our process for development and gathering input, I think it's going to really help us to hear from you about those sort of most challenging areas in nonprofit management that you would see technology as being one of the ways to solve or to manage or to get things accomplished in that particular area. And then we are going to ask the same question around service provision. So I think the next thing is going to be that we're actually going to use technology, and we're going to pull up the notepad, and we'd love to hear from you on this particular question. So if you want to, your phone, you can unmute your phone, or because we haven't muted anyone's line, you can either talk directly or you can type in the chat box about what you would see as some of your most challenging issues in terms of nonprofit management, and how that you think technology would be a place or a way or tool for helping with that. And it's probably that if you want to speak up, it would be great, people to speak up. I see 2 people typing. I know one of the areas in nonprofit management, oh, okay, Renee has shared 2 areas. One is around data, and the other is around finances. So, Renee, do you want to maybe expand a little bit on what you mean by data and or by finances? Renee also mentioned, so she has typed in data for program management. And so when we're talking about data for program management, we're looking at our levels of service. We're looking at the number of, who we're serving, how many people we're serving. Program management also involves costs and what are the resources that we're using in order to manage our program. Helen mentioned nonprofit management, a technology-based tool to manage multiple projects. And Helen notes that they have 17 funding sources. The activities are complementary, and there are multiple funding periods. So, Helen, and correct me if I'm wrong, so it's not only, it is about program management, but also managing multiple programs and managing the finances and funding across multiple programs, and being able to tie the finances as well as program outcomes together as you're managing your organization, so that you have the kinds of measures that you need in order to evaluate program effectiveness and also your organizational efficiency. Debbie typed in collecting data for reporting to the board and also reporting to OSEP. And I think that reporting piece is also very important, to be able to generate the kinds of reports that you need for different audiences. There are certain reports that are required by our funders, and then there are other reports that we use for our management, organizational management, and also for our board in terms of board governance. Keith writes, management, identifying useful tools for data collection and reporting And he adds that they are easy for a non-tech staff to learn. And I think that that is really key with many of us, is that our staff have varying levels of tech savvy, and we want to make sure that they are learning and that they are comfortable with whatever the technology is that we're using. And Helling says that's correct. It's also simply tracking multiple goals and objectives against varying timelines for implementation center-wide. Oh, and that's very, I think that's a huge need across our network. Is, how are we tracking those goals, objectives, benchmarks across the timelines to make sure that we're meeting the goals that we've set and that we've told our funders we were going to meet. Okay, Keith writes, service. This is related to service provision, fully integrating all communication channels, including email, phone, web, snail mail. That's, you probably want to add in there social media. How can we go about, what are some tools that are out there, what are some technologies that will help us to fully integrate all of those communication channels? So we think that we have a lot of agreement around nonprofit management issues, particularly around reporting and collecting data, whether it is internally, for internal use or for external partners and funders. Are there any other issue areas in terms of nonprofit management that folks are looking at and would be interested to hear more about technology solutions on? Okay.
Deborah?
We just have one. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'd be curious to ask.
Lisa, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm sorry.
It's
Lisa Küpper. I'm part of the CPIR team. And I'd like to ask Keith, when you speak of fully integrating all your communication channels, can you explain a little bit about that? And do come on the phone about how does that, what do you mean by integrating? What are you seeking to get out of integrating all of those systems?
Okay, this is Keith, and what I mean by that is that we use Salesforce as our basic information management system, and yet one of the challenges that we're always trying to figure out is how to get. I want my staff to spend as much time serving clients and as little time as possible on data entry and record keeping, and especially stuff that's redundant. So we'd like to have emails that come in through Outlook automatically post into the file, into that client's file in Salesforce, and information that we send to that client through Outlook to also get posted to Salesforce. That also means we'd like to have things like when they sign up for a webinar or a workshop online through our website, that would get attached to their Salesforce. And any communication we have, again, social media, if they're making comments to us or sending us things or any information or contact we have, we'd like to, as much as possible, automate that information or that communication connection to the file. And that improves our service so that, especially in cases where someone may have to contact that parent or person who's not directly or primarily on the file, and they need to have that information. They need to be able to see everything that's happened. That's
Right.
also crucial to us to help identify which methods are most effective in terms of communicating with people, so that we can manage how we're going to deliver services.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is very helpful, and I'm sure other folks on the call are nodding their heads and saying, yes, that's an area that is important for us as well. Then Angela Abdul noted, in terms of service provision, reaching families and youth, and thinking about the technology that will help with those outreach efforts. And that is definitely another issue that many of us are working on diligently. I won't say necessarily struggling with, because I think that a lot of us are doing some really good stuff in that area, but there are some places that we can look in terms of additional tools that can help us with that. So any others before we go to the next part of the conversation? Okay, so we're going to hide that pod, and and we're going to talk about our next approach. So I think that I think you guys gave us some really good input in terms of where those challenges are. And if there are people who are on the meeting but are not able to share right now, or want to or think of some things later on, we're actually going to follow up with a really brief survey that you can complete and respond to these questions a little bit more at your leisure than us sort of putting you on the spot right this moment. And so we'll be looking for your feedback through that process as well. And then the other thing that we know is really important around this area is that we want to make sure that we are facilitating the interaction between centers, from center to center, and also from peer to peer, because we know that there's a lot of expertise in the Parent Center Network around ways of using technology. Keith shared how his center is using Salesforce, and it sounds like he's gotten a certain level of expertise in using Salesforce, such that now he can really ask very straightforward and specific questions in order to move to the next level. And there are other people who are maybe just starting to use Salesforce or some other constituent relationship management software, but could benefit from hearing more about the ways that other centers are getting information into and out of their systems. And so we know that there's just a lot of expertise around almost every one of the topics that we have listed in terms of our priority, but also even in terms of these issues that people have outlined in terms of their challenges. So we want to be sort of a facilitator for you as parent centers to really talk to each other about technology, what's working for you, why it's working for you, and what you did or didn't do in order to get it implemented into your center. Because we're there, and we're in those parent centers, and I think that we know our work really better than anyone, and it's particularly through our technology planning efforts, have really thought about what technology means in terms of our work for and with families. So Now we'd like to hear from you about what are some of the technology solutions that you're using that you just, really think are awesome and you really want to share with others in our network. And these can be, things that are around nonprofit management or service provision or even if they're in some other area that we haven't figured out that fits in, because I think just about everything we do fits in these too. But what are some of the technology solutions that you're using? So Keith mentioned Salesforce, and I know there are a lot of parent centers who are using Salesforce. And in fact, one of your colleagues, Rachel Howard at Resources, what used to be called Resources for Children of New York City, now called Include NYC, came to us and suggested that there should be an opportunity for Salesforce users to get together and talk to each other about how are you using Salesforce? Well, I'm using this module. Are you using that module? And talking about dashboards and a lot of the components of Salesforce, and really to just talk to each other about how are you using it, what are you getting out of it, and to learn from each other, because each of the centers, many centers are at different levels. You have people who are maybe just joining, people who've been using it for a number of years and in different ways, and it's one of the examples of a tool that's out there that is helping parent centers to address a lot of their areas of service provision as well as nonprofit management. Are there other technology solutions that people are using that they would like to share with other folks? Nobody has anything exciting? Renee, I know you have something. There's Debbie typing.
All are so shy. Come on, talk to us. We're all ears.
Debbie is using PICS, the PICS database or constituent relationship management solution. And Debbie, we are working with Gretchen to organize a users group, and so hope to get some information out to you about how that's working, or Pacer will probably be reaching out to folks as well directly, because that is another robust data collection system that a number of centers are using, and I think to do that kind of mutual sharing and problem solving is kind of an additional support in addition to call and text support and making sure that you have and especially if there's any cost or anything for tech support. So we're getting that up and running for PICS as well. Hopefully, well, definitely by the time we are starting to look for your numbers. Salesforce is the exciting thing, looks like, for 2015. Be there or be square. I don't know. I mean, that's all I can think about in terms of right now. It is exciting. I think I outed myself as a technology nerd. One of the tools that I've been using, and it's probably something that many of you may be using, and that could in some way be integrated into Salesforce, so it's like worth a conversation to figure it out. But I've been using smartsheet.com, and it is a way of doing, we have like Excel spreadsheets, we use Gantt charts for tracking project outcomes, and we use it for getting people to put information into forms about activities that aren't necessarily ones that we collect in our that we have collected in our constituent relationship management. Sort of the more kind of partnership collaboration. And because it's web-based, we can invite external partners into the Smart Sheets one by one. It's similar to like Google Drive. I don't know how many people are using Google Drive to share and to do collaboration in terms of looking at data together with external partners, or looking at or developing products with external partners. So that's the Smart Sheet is similar to that. It just has a really very robust sort of Excel calculations, formulas, making Gantt charts, etc. Capacity to it. Parent-to-parent mentioned Box.com, and Box.com is for file sharing and file storage, and it's also a really good way to share files not only internally but also externally. And I mean, as parent centers, we do so much collaboration with other organizations and government partners that using these kinds of tools like a Box.com is a way for us to really be efficient in that. Helen Post uses PICS and Salesforce. I know, 2 databases within one center. That's funny. And this is what she wrote, not me. And they're looking at, we are considering Salesforce as an option, but are early on in the process of looking at this again. So Helen definitely might want to jump in on one of those Salesforce user group conversations and get some other folks' feedback on where you are. Emily asked, are any parent centers doing much with Google Drive? And Helen writes that she's using the Google site for sharing documents. Kim notes that she's using Dropbox for document and file sharing for collaboration. Kim, the biggest challenge has been the inputting and checking contacts for consistency. Is that a Salesforce comment or a Google Drive comment? I think it's the timing here. Yeah, I'm doing. So I'm like Helen. I'm thinking, Helen talks about being on 2 different databases. I think I'm in 3 or 4 data storage applications, and keep saying to myself, I need to pick 1, maybe 2. And Google Drive, Box, Dropbox, and often, especially with these solutions where you don't have a big fee to them, you end up in them more so because of what your partners like. Sometimes because of what you like, but sometimes it's because of what your partners like and use, etc. And then they get you started, and then you just sort of say you go with that too. But Helen says she uses a Google site for sharing documents as well, and also that she uses Google for email, file sharing, Hangouts. Yeah, we use Hangout. Hangouts is really cool for having that FaceTime meeting, especially if you have people who are not on site and you just want to see their face and in terms of the conversation. They just purchased a subscription for Donate Now for fundraising and for mass email. Debbie is using Constant Contact, which is one of the email dissemination programs, and we use that for the CPIR for email and for surveys. We use the Constant Contact for both of those purposes, and they also have an event capacity as well in Constant Contact. I don't know if anyone has used them for their events, registration, etc. Let's see. Any other? Oh, this whole awesome list. So now you guys know I'm going to be all distracted because I'm going to have to go check out some of these things. And one day somebody's going to have to let me come to their office and play in Salesforce. I just have to do that. And that was one of the, that's, I think, another thing that, and I know another opportunity for us sharing is, in terms of, sort of collegial sharing, is that if there is a center who, when we know what centers are using different programs, and you can find that, you'll be able to find that out, and we'll talk a little bit about more of that in a few minutes. But when there's a center who's using a particular application that you're really interested in, the technology is here now where through something like a Google Hangout, you can meet with that center even if you're in Maine and they're in Montana. You can meet with that center and take a look at what they're doing by doing a screen share on an application like Adobe Connect, or even cheaper is Google Hangout. And I mean, that's one of those wonderful things about technology today that we didn't have, say, 5 years ago, that you could basically for free hang out with someone and learn more about how they're using, how they're doing something in their center, or how they're using technology.
Well, this is Lisa again. Debbie was also asking if anyone else is using Donate Now, and I can't help but think that as we try and get centers to talk to centers about what they're using, that you can get that question answered, Debbie, by asking, and we'll find out if you would participate in that kind of conversation, who else uses it and what they have to say about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be interested to know more about Donate Now too. We recently signed up for Amazon Smile. I mean, I don't know if that's considered a technology solution, but it is, something that's available, and it is free, and it's, pennies per purchase. But when every penny helps, it's another way to do things that is, pretty close to being very low cost in terms of the effort that you have to put out on that if you're already doing other kinds of fundraising activities and correspondence and emails and so forth to drop that into your correspondence to folks. So we're at about 3:53, and this has been a really excellent conversation. And we have, if there are any, Donate Now, and Karen share that. So let us go to our next strategy around this. Lisa, do you want to talk a little bit about populating the hub? Did we lose Lisa?
Sorry, I was muted. I think it's definitely need to, as we learn from parent centers about the various, tech resources that they use and would recommend to their colleagues, we will be adding a lot of that information to the hub so that when you go to the hub, as you can see here on this slide, and you search, let's say, under nonprofit management, that information will come up. And beyond that, certainly there's a lot of guidance out there about getting particular tech questions answered, or a planning process to investigate, or you name it. It's an amazing amount of information out there. We would be adding some of those key resources to the hub, so when you search for information on the topic, which is so gigantic, there'll be resources in there to consult. And as that is in addition to another aspect of applying information and resources to parent centers through the buzz. And up till now, we've occasionally in the buzz highlighted the aspects of their technology or nonprofit management service provision, but we'll continue to do that, like this slide shows, that if you are speculating or worrying or concerned or interested in a particular resource that's listed there because it addresses a technology use or challenge you have with management or service provision, then it'll come just to you. You won't actually have to go looking for it at the hub. This is a good way to just pass information along without you having to really do anything to find it. And we certainly are open to, if you would like to have to share information about a particular resource or online or whatever, that you would like to reach all the parent centers for that information, just drop me a line and say, suggest it for the buzz. And if it doesn't fit in the buzz for that particular month, it'll go in the repository and possibly be a post on Facebook or a tweet so that the information will get out there to people that are looking for that kind of information. And then finally, we would be very interested in hearing, now let me just recap what we said because you get confused. In terms of how CPIR addresses the parent center's concerns, needs, assets, challenges in these two big areas, we were looking at we want to facilitate peer-to-peer sharing, and we want to use buzz. Load up the hub with good resources that you can use to make some of these decisions. And then any other strategies that you might suggest for how we can address these two priority areas that you need to be addressing yourselves. So we have one more weigh-in. I don't know if we really have enough time to make it a very long weigh-in, but if you have any suggestions or activities or approaches you would like to use or that make sense to you in terms of reaching parent centers, please do weigh in. We would be very, very pleased to hear what you have to say. Now that's a resounding reply. Okay. No one. Well, in the survey that the little questions at the end of this webinar that Deborah mentioned earlier, you can, if something occurs to you that you can share that with us about a strategy or an activity or an approach to meeting these two particular priority areas. Just let us know in that little answer, in your answers in the survey. And finally, we would you are very cordially invited to join and participate in the parent workspaces, especially with respect to this question, these questions of technology and service provision and nonprofit management. The product development group, which you can see the address there, because we would really like to see parent centers exchange information among themselves and give us more information about what they are looking for as well. And that is an excellent place to do it, and to solicit information from your colleagues. Back to you, Deborah. Oh, yeah. Anybody have any questions or comments? Please write it or go ahead.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, do know that this is definitely not the end of this conversation, that we really are looking forward to hearing from each of you further on this topic and we'll be sending out information about how to join the workspaces around use of technology and also around use of technology in service provision and nonprofit management. And so we hope that you'll join us there and that you will also respond to the survey that you're going to get through the through an email from our Buzz from the Hub site. So with that, I want to thank my CPIR team first, Indira, Lisa, and Miriam for your hard work in putting together this meeting and facilitating it. And then I want to thank each of you for having your attention and also for the great feedback and information that we've gotten from you so far, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.